I'm not sure there is much sustainable fashion at the moment. It feels that it's all very low scale, but the people who are doing it are really passionate about it, and I think it's trying to get that passion more widespread. It'd be great to get it into more of the mainstream industries so that they're sustaining what they're doing.
Well, it horrifies me how much everybody throws away, and fashion has just become disposable like everything else. It's the whole philosophy about you wear something a few times, you throw it away. Well, we've got to stop doing that.
Well, to be quite honest, before I actually went to the open day at the university, I hadn't given it a great deal of thought. My primary interest is historic costume and textiles. If I think about 40s clothing and the way that clothing was managed in the 40s, both on a national scale and actually in the household, then you do start thinking about sustainable living and sustainable clothing rather than fashion, I suppose.
I think actually fashion is incredibly boring today. There's very little imaginative stuff going on. The shops produce things at a huge rate. They're not meant to last. You're meant to wear them 3 or 4 times and then you move on to the next thing.
It's true over the past few years that mass production has increased, and I would prefer to go back to the days when you bought a suit and it lasted you for years and it was beautifully made, quality fabric, fitted you perfectly, and you didn't have to think about what you were going to put on when you needed to put on a suit for an interview or to go somewhere special. You just go to that one suit, which would be in your wardrobe all the time. That way we wouldn't be throwing away the clothes that we're throwing away. We wouldn't be polluting the planet as much as we are.
The manufacturing of clothing and the production of the materials that we use are actually quite resource intensive, and they are quite heavy on the environment.
I don't always think about the steps that come before the factory, and I think it's something that perhaps I'd like to learn a little bit more about, because the little bit I have learnt is worrying. I've learnt about the cotton industry and the amount of pollution the cotton industry causes, birth defects in the areas that this industry is based, and illnesses throughout life, livestock being made ill, the land that the cotton is farmed on. All these little things you don't really think about when you go and buy a pair of £12 jeans.
Well, I thought that sustainable fashion was one thing, but even just after the little bit that we've done now, thinking about the sustainability in the actual manufacture, I hadn't really considered if we did have something that in theory lasted forever and we kept making and mending and make do, that in theory those people that rely on providing the materials and providing the finished items could actually be out of work.
I think it's important to consider the resources that we're using and the impact we have, which obviously is key to sustainable fashion, but the element of not suddenly stopping buying anything altogether, and then you're putting jobs at risk, because these industries do employ a lot of people. And my own experience, when I worked in UK textile manufacturing, I was made redundant several times due to costs, falling demand, the whims of suppliers and so on. So sustainability is a real balancing act, because we've become so dependent on our current formula.
I've got a copy of the Case catalogue from the early 80s, and you can buy 3 shirts for £20. You can still buy 3 shirts for £20. Clothing is cheaper now than it's ever been. Being well clothed, I think, is something that contributes to a person's well-being. I do worry that something like sustainable clothing and turning up our noses at cheap fashion will become a privileged lifestyle choice, almost in the same way that high welfare foods is a lifestyle choice, and sometimes we can get a little bit sneery of people who aren't in a position to make those choices.